So Melissa, I want to start in 2005. It's Walter Reed Army Medical Center. At this point, you have your prosthetic. It's been a little under a year since you lost your leg. Let me do that again. Okay. I want to start in 2005, Walter Reed Army Medical Center. At this point, you have your prosthetic. It's been a little under a year since you lost your left leg. A spokesman for Paralympic athletes, John Register, I love that name, was there talking that morning. And this became the launch point for one of your biggest S-curves. Tell us what happened, what he said, what you were thinking, what you were feeling.
Oh my gosh, that day did. Absolutely. It kind of changed my life. So yes, I was not quite a year or a few months after losing my leg, kind of unsure what I was going to do with my life. And I'd always been an athlete with two legs and would kind of lay there in my hospital bed wondering, can I still be an athlete? Can I still feel, the thrill of a finish line, the sweat on my face? And I got into this room with John Register and he sat there and he has this booming voice and he's like, talking to all of us newly wounded veterans, if you train hard enough and dedicate yourself to a sport, you can compete on the world's biggest athletic stage as somebody with a disability at the Paralympic Games and represent your country. And as a young gymnast, I had dreamt of going to the Olympic Games. So here I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I have a second chance. And it kind of just, I left that room kind of having this new dream, this new goal.
Oh, it's beautiful. I got chills when you were telling this story, and this has been like 20 years. That's amazing. Oh. So your very first Paralympic Games, it's not that many years after. I mean, it's like 3 years later, you go, which is astonishing, miraculous, in Beijing. You leave empty-handed. Everyone wants to be that first-time wonderkin, although in my book, the fact that you were even at the Olympics is a wonderkin. But anyway, what did those games feel like? And I guess what emotions were you having, positive and negative?
So I was a Paralympian, right? So I had on that Team USA uniform. I was representing a country. I had defended over in Iraq and, I had worn a military uniform and now I'm wearing the uniform of our country to compete. And so different yet similar. And then, but nobody goes to the Olympics or the Paralympic Games wanting to be mediocre. You want to be the best athlete you can be. You want to be on that podium. And that didn't happen. I didn't do well athletically. So at the end of the biggest meet of my life, I got this participation medal, which I wanted to, throw out the window at the time. But looking back now, I realize that was such a part of the journey. It's kind of like that was, yes, I was a Paralympian, but I kind of had, unfinished business and wanted to go back and see what I could do. So looking back, as much as that was really hard at the time, and I just felt like I had let everyone down, that was kind of, looking back and seeing that and just knowing that was part of it.
Interesting. Do you now, in retrospect, have this thought of you would have in some ways almost peaked too early? And so, I mean, I guess what meaning of it do you make now around that?
I think just really the learning part of it, learning then that, you want the medals, you want to be on the podium, you want to do well, but sometimes it's about the journey to get someplace that means even more. So I think I was able to really recognize and learn that in that moment. And that's kind of helped me with my life as I've gone on. And, I think looking back, that's just kind of how it was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So jumping ahead today, this is going to be your fourth Paralympics event. For our listeners and for me, can you describe what a para-triathlon entails and how the classification system works?
Yes. So it's very confusing. I'm in it and I still get confused by it sometimes. So in the Paralympic Games, so every sport has its own classification system, which basically means that, so for example, in triathlon, there's 5 different disability classifications, and I am in the severe leg impairment classification. So I only compete against those that have severe leg impairments. And to get into that classification, you go in front of this med board and they do, they go based off of doctor's notes and range of motion and limb loss. And they kind of take all these things into account and put you in the correct disability classification. So the classifications differ per every sport. And, sometimes it doesn't seem like it's always fair, but you have to kind of group people together because you can't just have, 3 people competing. You want like a whole field. So they try to make it as fair as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Triathlon, I'm in the severe leg impairment. It's denoted PTS2 is my classification, but so we all have a lot of amputations above the knee. Some might have impairments on both sides. And then we all do the same sport. So we swim a half a mile, we bike a 20K, which is about 13-ish miles. And then we run a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. So it's all about speed and as fast as you can, and trying to get it all done fast.
You're like, just get it done. Okay. So I'm thinking running, I'm thinking biking. Those are their own challenges, but swimming seems like totally different, a completely different beast. What was it like when you first got in the pool? Like the early experiences of getting in the pool?
So any other swimmers, if you're a swimmer or swimmers that are listening might agree that the water has this kind of healing effect. And for me, I would get in the water, I almost forgot as though I didn't have a leg. It kind of just had this like natural feeling of making me feel whole. And I randomly love the smell of chlorine. Like it just kind of worked out. As I was learning to swim again, I learned about the Paralympics. So I was like, oh, I'm going to give this a shot in the sport of swimming. So it all just kind of, made sense. And I still love the water. I love the way it makes me feel.
So even though it was something new for you, actually, that's the place that you feel the most whole.
I do. Yes. And still, I mean, I'm in the water, 5 days out of the week, just with training leading into Paris. And it's, I love it. I mean, some days are better than others, but for the most part, I truly enjoy it.
Yeah. All right. So August is fast approaching. So you've got these Olympic medals. You've got, I mean, you now have a track record of like literally a track record. And how are you approaching training potentially different than you have in the past?
I think that, so the older I get, so I'm one of the older ones in my competitive field. So I'm 44. I'm a very proud 44-year-old. I'm a mother of 2.
Well done.
And a lot of my competitors, it's very different. I'm married, I have kids, and they're not married, no kids. So it's just a very different kind of mentality, I think. So the older I get, the more I know my body. I know like weekly training, what I can handle, what I can't. I know that I might need more recovery than my other teammates who are, who are 10 years younger than I am. So I feel like I know myself better. But the training is similar. And especially, leading into Paris, I compete on September 1st. So I actually have a countdown right next to me. I have 72 days until I can. So it's still a long time, but it's going to go fast. So my days revolve around training. I mean, this morning I was in the pool and the strength gym, I ran. So my days very much revolve around training. And then halfway through the day, I put the mom hat on and go about my mom life. So I enjoy it though. I enjoy it. I feel like you can't, I do it. If I didn't enjoy it, it wouldn't be worth it because it's so time consuming.
Yeah. And then you're able to switch gears and be a mom, although you probably most days think being a mom is harder than being a Paralympian. Are your children pretty young?
They're 6 and 9. I know. I need all the advice I can get with my kids. Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard job. It's the best job, but it's a hard job.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go back to April 13th, 2004. You are a first lieutenant with the Army's Transportation Corps. You're at the head of a routine convoy through central Baghdad. Then the roadside explosion, your Humvee shreds. The truck slams through a guardrail into a house. How do you approach that day to day? And I guess, what does that mean in the narrative of your life?
So that day is a day that changed my life forever. I mean, it was obviously I joined the Army. I chose to join. I knew that I was going to have to go over to the Middle East, over to Iraq, to a war, but you never think that something like losing a leg is going to happen to you, like until it does. Like you think, I didn't go over there thinking, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to come back without my leg. Like you just never think, like you think those things only happen to somebody else, right? You never think it's going to be you. But that day, I mean, that was the last day I stood on my own 2 legs. It was, a traumatic experience, obviously. You know, I was 24 years old in a second. I mean, an entire leg is gone. But like I had an emergency surgery in the Baghdad emergency room. You know, it was a life-saving surgery. I was losing a lot of blood. And I remember waking up and just having this preconceived notion of this is really hard and going to be really hard, but I know that I can get through this. Mm. I had immediately family members around me. I remember, you know, I was thankful it was me and not another one of my soldiers. It was this, you know, so every April 13th, every year that comes up, we actually celebrate it, and we celebrate it instead of mourning what we've lost. We, you know, celebrate what we still have. So, you know, it changed my life, but I've done some pretty incredible things in the last 20 years, and I'm really proud of them.
Yeah. It's interesting what you just said. You're like, I knew I could get through it. Where did that come from?
It's hard to know. I know I feel like I get asked a decent amount, you know, where does the positivity or the optimism come from? And I've always been a pretty optimistic person, probably annoyingly optimistic for a lot of people. But I find that I can get inspired or motivated by the most random things. I mean, looking out the window and seeing a tree blowing in the wind, I'm like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. Like, it's just the things that I get really motivated by. Yeah. So I think I've always kind of been that way. But then after losing a leg, I mean, obviously something that you never expect, you have no idea if you're going to be able to get through it. And then you realize that not only can you get through it, but you can like thrive and be better on the other side. So it's, I don't know. It's like, why not? Like, why choose to be negative and have that pessimistic attitude when you can choose to be the other way around, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that it just comes back to our agency. We choose how are we going to view an experience. I'm curious. So your children are 6 and 9 years old. How do you talk to them about having a prosthetic leg? What's that conversation look and sound like?
So to them, so that's all they've known. So to them, I'm just mom. And I feel like half the time they don't even see my prosthetic, which I would actually prefer. Yeah. And I used to joke that they would think that all moms had prosthetic legs until they, you know, they're in school age now and they look around and they're like, like, oh, my mom is a little bit different. And it's not until their friends noticed that they started to notice, which is just interesting. And they're like, oh, my mom is a little different. Like, because that's, again, that's all they know. So because their friends have then asked questions and they start to ask questions, they know I lost it from a roadside bomb. They have seen pictures. You know, I speak at schools a lot, and younger age kids, I never want to tell them because I don't like that I lost it to a bomb from a bad guy because I never want to scare these younger kids. But I thought it was important. I mean, my daughter, she's 6, and for her to understand. And so she does. I mean, now, but again, it's just it's just like, you know, they're so used to carrying my running leg around. Like they know I have to wake up. It's just so normal to them that they don't even, I feel like they don't really have that many questions because it's just so normal. If that makes sense. Like,
it completely makes sense. Like we get up and we eat our breakfast and this is what mom's body looks like, period.
Right.
And,
there's like no difference. Got it. They've never known me otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering, so this explosion happened only 3 weeks after you had landed in Iraq. So do you ever feel like your S-curve or your journey as a soldier was unfinished? Like any thoughts, any reflections there?
It was a short time in the military, but I like to say it was short but eventful. So no, you know, I mean, I had a year long in my mind. We were supposed to be in Iraq for a year. So in my mind, I had this chunk of my life that was planned out. And it just so happened that I spent the majority of it in the hospital instead. So no, I mean, I don't know if I agree with like things happen for a reason, but like they kind of do, or things just, when you look back, they just kind of seem to work out how they should. And so I don't know. No, I don't think there's any unfinished business there, like finished time. I feel like again, it was short, but eventful.
It's interesting listening to you talk, Melissa. I mean, I know you know this, but I'm going to point it out anyway. Listening to you talk, because I do a lot of coaching, leadership coaching, your resilience and emotional regulation, my guess is if people kind of tested you for it, it would be off the charts. It's really it's awesome. So I just want
Okay.
to call that out.
Well, that's
Um,
kind. Thank you.
I would love to hear about a moment. You started to touch on this earlier when you're swimming, but I would love to hear about a moment, and it might be when you were at the Olympics, but it might be another time where, as an athlete, you just felt completely in flow. Like there was just this feels so good. Where were you? What were you doing? What did it feel like? What did it smell like? Can you think of one or two of those moments for yourself?
Um, so obviously there's moments in competition and
Yep.
there's kind of obvious ones of like being on a podium. I mean that's like one of the highlights of my life and the Paralympic Games. But I think aside from that, there's so I love running. And
Mhm.
running is so I love swimming. It makes me feel this whole, but running is something that I didn't know if I'd be able to do again. And now that I do it, and I just have this I love the feeling of it. I love the sound of my prosthetic blade on the track or on the road. And I mean, I'll get like even just this week, there was a Tuesday morning. I was out of the track at 6:30 a.m. It was like the perfect temperature. I started to run. I'm like, this is going to be a good run. I had some hard efforts and I just felt so in tune with myself, the sound of my foot on the track, the breathing that I was like myself breathing, like the sun is kind of up, but it's not quite up, and
Mhm.
just those are and then you just see your times. You're like, wow, like this is a really good workout, and it just kind of fills me up. It kind of
Mhm.
starts my day off, and I think, okay, like I can do this. So it's just like and they don't have those workouts don't happen all the time. So when they
Mhm.
do, it kind of makes them extra special.
Mm. Mm. Talk to me about the community of athletes that you compete with and
Mhm.
what that looks like.
So I live in Colorado Springs. So I train at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And we have a resident team, which basically means that there are 7 of us that train together pretty much every day. Some live on campus, like on the actual Olympic Training Center campus, and some live off complex, like I do, like in a house. And then we just go to the training center to train. So, and these are athletes that there's another girl, one of my best friends, that's in my classification. So we're direct competitors. But
Mhm.
the other ones have visual impairments, have spinal cord injuries, so are in wheelchairs. So kind of um, different disability types, but we're all coming together for the same goal. And they are
Mhm.
just incredible. I mean, they're some of my best friends. They're my second family. We spend so much time together. And then when we go to these competitions, like to Paris, for example, there's other athletes that don't live at the training center, but live and train on their own from kind of all over the nation. And we come together for these big competitions. And there are, we have this special bond. Triathlon as such where, I don't know, I feel like it tends to attract the good people. Like they're all
Yeah.
just great people. And my teammates, I mean, that they really are what kind of keep me going year after year as my teammates.
Mm. Okay, so tell me about Dare to Try. What are you doing with that, and what's its impact?
Yep. So Dare to Try. So it's Dare to Try Para Triathlon Club, and Dare to the number 2 and then try. So in 2010, so gosh, 14 years ago now, 2 friends and I co-founded it back in Chicago. And the idea was to get athletes with physical disabilities into the sport of triathlon. So a lot of times you take somebody, like anyone off the street, you're like, hey, do a triathlon. They're like, oh, I can never do that. I'm never going to swim, bike, or like, no way, I can't do that, which I will tell them that, yes, you can. But you take somebody with a physical disability, maybe they're blind, maybe they're in a wheelchair, and you're like, hey, you want to do a triathlon? And they're like, I could never do that. It's like, how would I do that? Like I'm in a wheelchair. But at Dare to Try, we prove to them that they can. And
Mhm.
the expensive adaptive equipment can be expensive. You don't just walk into a store and get a bike that you power with your arms. Like, so that's a barrier. A lot of times coaching, getting to races, knowing the races, finding that community, there are all these barriers to get into the sport. And Dare to Try kind of takes all these barriers away. So we have adaptive equipment that we can provide. We have year-round programming. We have different camps for youth, adults, injured service members, and we get these athletes to the starting line, and they swim, they bike, and they run. And oftentimes, they get to the finish line, and the self-confidence, the self-worth is just like exuding in them, like what they can do. And they see how much ability is in their disability. We like to say that the finish line is just the beginning for a lot of our athletes. So it's, you know, in the past we have served 5, 6, 7, 800 different athletes and made a positive impact on their lives. And some of them have gone on to be Paralympians. Some of them have gone on to be able just to ride a bike around the neighborhood with their kids when they didn't think they could do that before. So it's kind of from that grassroots community level all the way up to the top. And we kind of do it all. And it's pretty incredible.
Is this a nonprofit or a for-profit company?
Yep. Nonprofit.
Okay. And so you raise money for it?
We do. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So people wanted to, maybe we can put in the show notes if people want to donate to this. Let's do that.
Yep. The website is Dare to Try. So dare to TRI.org. And there's volunteer opportunities all over. We're based out of Chicago, so mainly in the Midwest. But I mean, any sort of, the expensive equipment. I mean, the money goes a long way with us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So you're based out of Chicago. Great. Yeah. So let's include that, and we will make a small donation. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So Melissa, you're 44 years old. Your children are young. This is your 4th Olympics. What do you want to get done in the next 20 or 30 years? Like what big ambition do you have?
That's a tough one because so I started the Paralympic Games in 2008. It's 2024 and I'm still going, right? So this has been my life for a long time.
Yeah.
My life has revolved. Family is always first, but my life has kind of revolved around athletics for years and years and years. So short-term goal is obviously Paris, but that's 72 days away. So that's coming up.
Yeah.
And there's no telling what's going to happen after that. Am I going to continue to LA? A lot has to happen for that. I need to still love the sport. My body has to hold up. I still need to be competitive. So a lot of things have to happen for that. So when I think about the next, 15, 20 years, obviously my family comes up first. I want to continue to be the best mom I can be, to show my kids, to give them opportunities, to be there for them, and to, help them believe that they can do anything that they want to do. I do a lot of motivational speaking. So I enjoy sharing my story, and I've, kind of travel all around to various companies doing that. So continuing to do that and inspiring others in hopes that, they can see their own potential in their own life. But I don't know, I've always been very goal oriented. So I don't know. I feel like something else is going to come up. I can't imagine athletics ever going away from my life. So there'll still be, even if I'm not at the elite level, there'll be some sort of other athletic endeavors. Maybe I'll do more coaching, maybe I don't know, start a Dare to Try chapter out in Chicago and help other athletes. There's a lot of opportunities. I think after Paris, I'll kind of give myself some time to rest and reflect, and then kind of probably have to figure it out. But that's going to be exciting.
Okay. Yeah. I just wondered if you had some master plan, and what you're saying. Yeah. My master plan is I'm going to keep on doing fantastic things. I'm putting words in your mouth, but, and it's going to have something to do with sports, and I'm going to be a great mom, and the opportunities and where you can serve will emerge. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. Okay. I think that's it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So a question that I tend to ask, and you may not have anything, but we'll see. So at the end of an interview is, what was useful for you in this conversation? So it might not be anything that you said, but it might be just oh, I had this idea. What came up for you in the conversation?
So I like that you asked what, to describe a moment that, you kind of feel and you smell these things, because you don't often think about those, right? You don't think about those moments, and they're really around us every day, but you kind of live them and then you kind of forget them, or you don't think about them. And I think it's even just this track workout on Tuesday, I knew it was a good one, but I didn't really think about how great it was. So I think kind of focusing sometimes on those small things it can be so moving or beneficial, or just important to recognize that we live in this massive world, but it's the little things that can make these big moments, So I appreciate that. Just kind of the reflection on, something that I wouldn't normally focus on.
So good. All right. Any final closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I don't think so. Hopefully everyone will tune in. September 1st is when I'll be racing over in Paris. And, it'll be live on, I think on somewhere on the internet. There'll be highlights on NBC, and hopefully I'll be on that podium, but just appreciate the USA cheers and can't wait to be out there with my teammates.
Thank you, Melissa. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.